David Benioff and DB Weiss did a rare interview where they talked about Game of Thrones, and boy, were they trolling. So if you don't have high blood pressure issues, let's talk about what they said. First, if you're wondering if they have watched House of the Dragon or re-watched the main series, they've been very open about it. Neither of them have watched House of the Dragon, but Weiss has rewatched Game of Thrones recently with his family. However, he avoids anyone trying to get him to reflect on the results of the show and what he could have changed. David, on the other hand, hasn't watched Thrones or any Thrones episodes since the finale. Which sounds about right to me. David always came across as the more egotistical, I'm always right one, and DB Weiss is more of the I like pain psycho vibes. Seriously, I'd be very terrified to drink with DB Weiss. Though the Hollywood Reporter shared this from their interview with the directors, they staunchly avoid reflecting on the series. They feel it wouldn't benefit themselves, HBO, or the thousands of people who worked on Thrones to criticize anything about it. So wow, they're dodging addressing any criticism for the sake of us. They are just so wonderful, so giving, so pure. Next, they talked about how some people weren't happy with the ending of Game of Thrones. David Benioff stated, "You always hope everyone's going to love anything you do, and it would have been great if 100% of people loved it, but they didn't. You can get so bogged down in public opinion that you spend your whole life Googling things and trying to find people who felt one way or the other." And then DB Weiss added to it saying, "Even super positive feedback makes you feel weird and teeth grindy and on edge. There's a drug quality to the feedback. And as soon as we went cold turkey, the last time I Googled myself was in 2013, and ambient stress level in our lives dropped by about 50% overnight." Well, yeah, when you ignore your problems and any criticism, of course you feel better about yourself. DB shared that despite the horrible things said online, when he meets people in person though, they are generally more kind. DB said, "There's something that happens in the transition from human interaction to online that pushes things in a specifically aggro direction." Yeah, this just in. Being anonymous on the internet makes people feel free to be as dickish as possible. On the other hand, we actually have an actor, Samuel Tarly's actor John Bradley, who talked about the final season of Game of Thrones and how because of it, there's a lot of pressure on D&D. He shared in an interview, "They're quite aware lightning striking once is rare enough. They know there's such a greater degree of expectation on them than on Thrones because they have a reputation to uphold. Certain people who still have an attitude towards Thrones and maybe are looking to see them not hit the mark this time. That's in the back of David and Dan's mind, because how could it not be? I think people are going to see this and reevaluate them and realize just how great they always were. It's going to prove a lot of people right, and maybe a few people wrong. They're still trying to break boundaries of what television can be." I love that they describe people that are unhappy with the shit show ending of Game of Thrones as people with an attitude. That's absolutely fantastic. Keep blaming the fans. Oh, an executive producer for Thrones, Brian Cogman, said that you won't find a single person that worked on Thrones that have a bad thing to say about either directors. That they're just genuinely great, decent people. Which, oh dang, really, Brian? Because maybe we should talk to Roz or Barristan's actors or a bunch of other actors. I think they might not have nice things to say about the two. They also touched on how a lot of book readers, A Song of Ice and Fire book readers, wanted more of a one-to-one adaptation from the books to the show, but the directors felt if they did that, people would not have liked the show as much. David said, "During the first couple of seasons of Thrones, a lot of people were like, why didn't they put in this scene? They wanted a literal adaptation of every single page. I always wondered, would people like that if they actually got it?" David, for hardcore fans, yeah, probably. I mean, the show went downhill when you no longer had the books to go off of. If you're wondering if they'll try their hand in another fantasy show anytime soon, they said it was important to get themselves away and put Westeros behind them, so they're trying to avoid that genre for a while. Now, there have been some accusations that D&D are money hungry, and they wanted you to know the real reason why they are not credited on House of the Dragon. D&D stated that due to their contract, they were guaranteed producer credits on all future Game of Thrones spin-offs, which would get them money despite doing nothing, but they ended up refusing. David stated, "HBO was kind of confused. I remember their lawyer saying, but it's just money. We're just going to pay you." And DB Weiss continued, "I don't think there's such a thing as free money. For us, if our name is on it, especially that, while being completely detached and uninvolved, it felt like the strain that would come with that hands-off approach, with its success or failure or anything in between, was not worth it." So there you go. If you think they're money hungry or they just wanted to move on to bigger and better things after Thrones, which is why they rushed it, they're not, I guess. Lastly, D&D couldn't help themselves, and when they were asked if they'd change anything about the show, they declared they'd have more Mord, the jailer at the Eyrie who roughed up Tyrion. DB Weiss said, "It was a mistake not bringing Mord, the jailer, back into it. We always talked about doing it." And if that isn't fun enough for you, they even had a plan of how they would bring him into the show again. They shared, "There's a scene set in a tavern. Was it Brienne or the Hound? But we realized too late that Mord could have owned the tavern. We could have had that actor in the background acting exactly the way he did as a jailer, except now as a small business owner. It was just such an obvious no-brainer day after idea." So if you were hoping that D&D had any remorse or regret for Game of Thrones, there you go. They just wanted more Mord. Alright, I'm gonna go drink a bunch of water so I don't stroke out. Like, subscribe, and let me know why D&D are your heroes down below.